Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of Monmouthshire County Council's Cabinet. I'm Richard John, Leader of the Council, and we'll start by asking my Cabinet colleagues to introduce themselves. And we'll start this afternoon with Councillor Phil Murphy.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Phil Murphy, Cabinet Member for Resources.
Thank you. And Jane?
Councillor Jane Pratt, Cabinet Member for Infrastructure and Neighbourhood Services.
Thank you. And joining us virtually today, Paul?
Good afternoon, everyone. Councillor Paul Pavia, Cabinet Member for Education.
Thank you. Penny?
Good afternoon. I'm Penny Jones, Cabinet Member for Social Services, Safeguarding and Health.
Thank you. And Lisa? Looks like Lisa might be having a bit of difficulty joining the meeting, but we've also got Councillor Sarah Jones, who will be joining us a little bit later in the meeting, and we've had apologies for absence from our colleague Councillor Bob Greenland today. Can I invite next group leaders to introduce themselves, please? Can we start with Dimitri? Is Dimitri Petrini on the meeting today? Leader of the Labour Group? No? Okay. Simon Howarth.
Hi, Chair. Good afternoon. Simon Howarth, Leader of the Independent Group.
Welcome, Simon. Thank you for joining us. And Joe?
Good afternoon. Councillor Joe Watkins, Leader of the Liberal Democrat Group.
Welcome, Joe. Well, thank you both very much for joining us. So this meeting is being held as a hybrid meeting. So some of us are here in our chamber in County Hall and a number of colleagues joining online. If I can invite officers to introduce themselves as they contribute to the meeting, that would be really helpful. Thank you. We've got a lengthy agenda today, 13 items, but some really positive reports. So we'll start. Just before we start, if I can ask for any declarations of interest, please.
Yes, Leader. Well, I don't have a declaration of interest, but when we come to talk about the Abergavenny Velo Park, I'm a member of the Planning Committee and I discussed it in planning yesterday. It was from an entirely different point of view to that we're discussing today, but I've taken advice from the monitoring officer and I needed to make that clear.
Thank you very much. That's really helpful. So that's noted. So we'll move then to item 3, which is the reports today. And the first report is the Education Achievement Service business plan for the next 3 years. And presenting this for us today is Councillor Paul Pavia.
Yes, thanks, Leader. This is the EAS business plan for the next 3 years. I've got Ed Price, who's the Assistant Director of EAS, who's just going to take us through it, and then I can come in then and at points and questions and for members after Ed's finished, if that's okay. Thanks, Ed.
Perfect. Thank you. Welcome, Ed.
Thank you, Councillor Pavia. Thank you, Leader. I will briefly take you through this report. It has been through a scrutiny process. I think the key with this report, it is seeking agreement from members for the EAS Business Plan 2022-2025. It's the first time that we have written a 3-year business plan, working with colleagues closely in the local authority. We will still be having annual updates to this plan so that it is agile and timely to meet all the needs of Monmouthshire schools and learners. The recommendation is to approve the EAS business plan. This is a high-level business plan. One of the key changes is to attempt to make it more accessible for a wider range of audiences than previously. We have worked in close partnership with the LA officers to meet the strategic needs as described in Monmouthshire's strategic plans. One of the key changes as well is to do with the way we look at accountability. We know that accountability is changing in Wales, and we have agreed through feedback after the last few months to surface more information to you as members to make you more aware of the progress that our schools are making and the impact that we as a service and as a local authority are having on our schools. That's one of the key elements. You will be aware as well that two cabinet members have been involved in this process representing the interests and needs of Monmouthshire on company board, ARAC and our JEG group as well. I won't go into further detail on that and to allow more time for any questions that you have on the business plan and the latest final version of that business plan that has been attached to this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Paul, do you want to come back in at this point?
Yeah, and thanks, Ed, for just setting out the context of the paper. I've obviously seen the development of the business plans through the eyes of the Joint Executive Group, as Ed's just alluded to, the JEG, which is the forum of Gwent Cabinet members and senior officers that works in a governance monitoring capacity with the EAS. I know a considerable amount of work has gone into the development process of this 3-year plan. I know EAS colleagues have been very fortunate to have some facilitated vision sessions with Floyd Woodrow. As cabinet colleagues will know very well that we've worked with Floyd on several occasions, and he helps to deliver the incredible Compass for Life programme in our schools, and been very fortunate to witness that at first hand. As the business plan sets out, there's very much a focus on delivering improved outcomes for pupils, improved professional development for our teaching cohort that positively impacts teaching practice, and improved professional training and peer support networks for our governing bodies to improve governance oversight. You will see we've got our listed priorities on page 14, and we've got a strategic summary of what has been achieved in 21-22 on page 34. And you know, as the business plan and the covering paper sets out, you know, there's been considerable amount of impact, pandemic impact over the last 2 years. It's been an incredibly challenging 2 years, and it's certainly thrown up a number of considerable challenges for certain pupil cohorts. You know, those who've transitioned from early years to formal school settings, those who've transitioned from primary school to secondary school, and then obviously those at the top end then of Key Stage 3, those who leave in the statutory school sector to move on to other forms of learning and employment. And that's not to obviously not to leave out those vulnerable and disadvantaged learners that we already know about that require additional investment and support. So, you know, children that are looked after, children on free school meals, and children with additional learning needs. As the business plan alludes to in various forms, while the pandemic has thrown up challenges, there's also been a huge amount of learning and development that's transpired over that period. We cannot afford to snap back to what was in place pre-March 2020 and lose the gains that we've made in areas like the transformation advances in virtual blended learning, a significant leap in what we're achieving in the virtual space. And I have to say, you know, from a Monmouthshire perspective, our blended learning offer is very, very, very strong. You know, we're in a really fortunate position to have that developed over the last couple of years, as well as more obviously flexible CPD opportunities for teachers and governors. You know, these are real successes. However, there's obviously a lot of catch-up and nurturing pastoral work that needs to be done with pupils in Monmouthshire. We've got an ALN legislation to embed, and obviously a new curriculum to implement very shortly. So, you know, I look forward to working again with the EAS to continue the proactive and flexible approach that they've delivered with us, and enable us to achieve our goals as set out in the business plan. So thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Can I invite Phil Murphy to come in, please?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. And I don't want to add any more to what Paul's just said, but just to say that I've scrutinised this at board level, and it was given quite a lot of discussion at the board. I'm very happy with it. As I say, I wouldn't want to add anything to what Paul said. He's covered it very well.
Absolutely, thank you. And you know, on behalf of the council, we're grateful to Ed, Paul, and Phil that the partnership we have between Monmouthshire and the EAS has delivered so many benefits to our school system. The fact that we've been on this education journey over the last 10 years and got to the stage where there are no schools in Monmouthshire in a red category, no schools under any sort of ESTIN intervention, is really positive steps. So that partnership between us and the EAS is really delivering benefits. So thank you very much for that report. So we'll move on to the recommendations then. It's just one recommendation today, that we approve the EAS business plan for the next 5 years, 22 to 25. So can I ask Cabinet colleagues to vote on that, please? The voting icon will be appearing on your screens in the next few moments. So can I ask everyone to vote on that now, please? Fab. That's unanimous in favour. Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul. So we'll move on, and Ed, thank you very much for joining us. We'll move on to the next report today, then, the second report, which is the Revenue and Capital Monitoring 21-22 Forecast Outturn Statement, month 9. And presenting this is Councillor Phil Murphy.
Yes, thank you again, Leader. And the report is here to provide members with an updated forecast of the revenue and capital outturn position for the current financial year. This report, as usual, will be considered by select committees as part of their programme. And it also provides an update on the financial impact of COVID-19 on the Council. So amongst the recommendations, the Cabinet recognises the forecast surplus, which is in the report at 2.1 million. We've had a further grants in, so I think we'll be looking at circa 3 million by the time we get to the 31st of March. We'll have to see, but that's what it's looking like. As I say, a significant improvement on the forecast outturn position since month 6, which was estimated at just over 4 million. We note the improvement in the forecast outturn has arisen both through continuing budget recovery action and more significantly through the notification of substantial and further late specific grant funding, and I just mentioned even more received from the Welsh Government before the year end. We recognise the importance of a positive outturn position being achieved for 21-22 in that it safeguards and now forecasts to contribute to limited one-off reserve headroom retained to assist with meeting the unpredictable financial challenges over the medium term, and where uncertainty still remains to the extent of future pressures and the funding available to meet these challenges. Cabinet recognises that currently the overall net revenue forecast surplus at month 9 is 310,000, as this takes account of further forecast deficit of 1.872 is directly associated with the extraordinary financial pressures attached to COVID-19. If it's expected that 1.872 million is fully recovered from Welsh Government COVID-19 Hardship Fund, and there's absolutely no reason why that shouldn't be, the overall surplus would be along the lines that I've just mentioned. It's also in the recommendations that Cabinet can be reasonably assured, based on the commitments from Welsh Government, that COVID-19 pressures will be covered, as well as income losses that are eligible to be met from the COVID-19 Hardship Fund. And as I've said in the past, that runs out on the 31st of March. So we have to see what happens after that, and we await clarification on any further assistance that might be given, and there is more indication of that coming through. The Cabinet is also asked to note there remains significant COVID-19 related cost pressures and income losses forecast after the end of March 22, as I was saying, and these have to be assessed and incorporated into the final budget proposals for 22-23. Cabinet recognises the current budget forecast allows for estimated non-teaching pay award of 1.75%. The outcome of pay negotiations is awaited, and in the event, excuse me, that the agreed pay award is above this estimate, this will present a further budgetary pressure. No compensating funding is anticipated. The Minister made it quite clear that the provisional settlement covered any eventuality that might come up. And the overall revenue outturn position continues to be subsidised by 2.2 million of capital receipts, which are being used to fund identified eligible expenditure under the flexible use of the Capital Receipts Directive. I know there's been some inquiries about that. That's a temporary measure that we will hope to phase out before very long. We also asked to note the forecast 93% delivery of the budgeted mandated savings as detailed in Appendix 3 of the report, and as agreed by full council previously, and the implicit remedial action and savings included in the financial outturn to compensate for the around 7% savings, that's 309,000, reported as delayed or unachievable by service managers. If you recall, Leader, we had an issue during the pandemic that officers were redeployed, and as a result of that, they weren't able to concentrate on the savings included in last year's budget, although there's been a considerable amount of work to catch up on that subsequently. So we also note the extent of the forecast improvements in school balances. Considerable amount of additional grant funding has come in there, and that has helped us with the school balances quite significantly. There's also a forecast capital outturn spend of 31.5 million, which is shown in Appendix 1, that resulting from forecast slippage on capital expenditure of 54.3 million. We also asked to approve the capital budget revisions listed in Appendix 4 to this report, resulting from the notification of external capital grant awards to the value of 4.01 million, and also draw on Section 106 balances of 971,000. So within the key issues, the pandemic continues to have a major impact on all local authorities and wider public services across Wales. And from a financial point of view, the response to the pandemic has required the councils to incur significant additional expenditure. In addition, income losses have also been substantial, although up to the 31st of March, these have been covered by and will be covered by the COVID Hardship Fund. The Council has been given clear commitments that the proposed Welsh Government support will be there to meet the COVID-19 pressures, and we look forward to those promises coming to fruition. So the overall forecast surplus comprises the expected additional costs of 409,000 and income losses of 1.463 million directly associated with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the council, alongside the forecast surplus that I mentioned earlier on core council service delivery. If as expected, the 1.872 million is fully recovered from the COVID-19 Hardship Fund, the surplus would be around that 3 million that I mentioned. Also, Council's grateful for the funding commitment made to date by Welsh Government. It is imperative that the Council looks to continue to make strong representations for further clarity on the funding arrangements ongoing. And as I said earlier, there is some indication now, particularly with regards to homelessness, that might work to the benefit of that particular part of our expenditure. As you know, the Council prudently set aside reserve funding at the end of 1920 and 2021, totalling 2.6 million for specific COVID-19 related pressures which were yet to materialise. And reserve funding will be topped up and available to mitigate the impact of that. So it remains of critical importance that services manage budget and expenditure tightly and take all opportunities to maximise income generation and bear down on costs. It's vitally important that services do not become reliant upon Welsh Government support and develop strategies that allow them to emerge from the pandemic on a sustainable financial footing. Just as importantly as managing the direct impacts of the pandemic on the Council, the wider and longer-lasting indirect impact on Council services needs to be considered, particularly in that area of homelessness. Also children's services, adult social care and children's additional learning needs. So as the Council continues to transition from the response phase of the pandemic, it's important that Cabinet is kept informed as impacts are being assessed. The Council had already faced significant financial challenges in setting balanced budget for 21-22, and the pandemic has only accentuated the challenge. The budget round saw £10.3 million worth of budget pressures accommodated, notably in full all pay and pension related spending pressures on the schooling system, increased demand on children's social services, adult social care and children with additional learning needs, significant service pressures within the passenger transport unit and within cycling and waste that look to ensure that the Council supports and sustains key service delivery. We continue to do what we can to look after the homeless people with adequate support, and there's the ongoing commitment to recognise and value the contribution made by the workforce and ensuring that local government staff are paid no less than the minimum wage set by the Living Wage Foundation. So despite accommodating all the above pressures at month 9, there continues to be significant in-year core service pressures forecast, with many of these pressures developing in the same key areas that have provided additional support in the budget. So I'll stop there, Leader. I've covered a lot. The report goes into far more detail, but it's good news for the current year's budget. I'm sure you're aware we're an administration that's never overspent our budget. And despite the forecast at month 6, it looks very much as if that will be the case again this year.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Can I invite the author of the report, Pete Davis, if there was anything you wanted to add to that, please?
Thank you, Leader. No, nothing to add. I'm very happy to respond to any questions or any points of clarification that the Cabinet member can't deal with himself, but I think Councillor Murphy's covered the report very comprehensively, covered all the main points. So thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, and we're grateful to Councillor Murphy and his officers for the stewardship of our budgets. It's really reassuring to note that we've never overspent on our budget, despite those extraordinary challenges that you mentioned, Phil, that we've been experiencing over the last few years, combined with the fact that we remain the lowest funded council in the country. For every, we're receiving from the Welsh Government about £1,176 per head of population, compared to nearly £1,900 per head of population for some neighbouring councils. And I note that if we were funded to the average, not to the highest, just to the average in Wales, we'd have an extra about £40 million a year, every year, to invest in frontline services.
Yes, just about that.
It just feels that gap has just widened to such an extent now that we really need some reform, because that funding formula is quite clearly broken. I can't see any hands up, so we'll move to the recommendations then, and I think you covered those recommendations quite thoroughly, Phil. So I'm not minded to read every single one, but perhaps we can
I'm
vote on
inclined
block.
to take them on block, Leader.
Okay, so let's do that then. We'll move to the vote, and we're going to take those 12 recommendations that Phil set out. They're in the report from point 2.1 through to 2.12, and I'll ask Cabinet members to vote on those on block, please. The voting icon should now be on your screens, so please vote now. That's unanimous in favour of those recommendations. Thank you very much. So we'll move then to the next item on the report, which is the revenue and capital budget for 22-23, the final proposals. And Councillor Phil Murphy is going to present this report, please.
Yes, thank you, kind Leader. And Cabinet went out to consultations with draft budget proposals that required 863,000 of revenue support. Reserve report, sorry, and a proposed increase in council tax of 3.95%. This despite a considerably better provisional settlement than we have had for many years. However, Monmouthshire remains, as you mentioned just now, the lowest funded council on a per capita basis in Wales. The settlement, although welcomed, was insufficient to meet the significant unavoidable pressures that the council is facing, and where we have been able to, we have mitigated these. Savings in directorates were much lower than were achieved in the previous budget rounds, reflecting the considerable difficulty in finding service redesign efficiencies, with so much identified and saved in previous years, and at the time when the council's focus has been on supporting its communities through the pandemic and dealing with the significant demands that are becoming evident as we move forward. Subsequently, we now have had the final settlement, which has given us circa £3,000 extra. This will require a marginal adjustment to the budget report coming before Council in paragraph 2.4 of that in sections A and B. There's some minor tweaks only amounting to approximately £3,000. Cabinet made it clear that the consultation period would end on the 16th of February and that we would be unable to consider any alternative proposals after that date due to the impact and equality assessments that are required to be carried out. To date, no alternative proposals have been made. The final budget proposals look to support the priorities of the Council and the challenges that face our county and society more generally, specifically all pay and pension related spending in schools up to 3%, increasing demands with children with ALN, increasing complexity around looked after children, growing impact of an ageing population, and with the challenges that results from a fragile and unsustainable social care market, significant pressures in the passenger transport unit and within recycling and waste, responding to the needs of the homeless, and further investment in highways and transport infrastructure. And you will note that those were the points that I raised in the month-line outturn report. You know, things don't change, do they? We will continue to be at the forefront of the climate change agenda. We will continue to work on narrowing health inequalities, social care reform, helping children catch up following the interruption to education by the pandemic. We'll continue our schools building programme, mental health and well-being in adults and children. And there were numerous opportunities for consultation responses. There was a broad understanding of the pressures and issues that the Council faces, both pandemic and otherwise related. However, there was a considerable concern raised by the public about the level of the proposed increase in council tax. Concerns were also raised regarding homelessness pressures, potential income losses on our leisure centres, and the impact on income from our commercial investment portfolio. Following on from helpful consultation responses and after a great deal of re-examination of the original proposals, for which Cabinet is very grateful to senior officers and their staff, the following revisions have been made. The proposed increase in council tax to be ratified at full council tomorrow will be reduced to 2.95%. Further investment in the capital programme to meet infrastructure and housing needs, following a revision in expectations around tenancy levels, and the pressure has reduced it significantly in our commercial investment portfolio, with the overall portfolio now only projected to fall slightly short of previously budgeted net income levels. Given the alterations set out in 3.30 and 3.34 of the report, there is no longer any one-off reliance on reserves. Therefore, maintaining the level of the Council's general reserve in the event of significant pressures in future budget rounds. This will be reinforced now by a now forecast underspend in the current year, as I mentioned in the last report, which will look to provide additional reserve cover against the budgetary risk that remained around a potential for significant homelessness costs to be met as the Council looks to secure additional temporary accommodation. So, Leader, before I finish, can I thank Peter Davis, Jonathan Davis and their teams for the considerable amount of work that has gone into this process that allowed these final budget proposals to be considered by Cabinet today ahead of full council tomorrow for approval at its meeting. I propose the recommendations are taken as read. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, and I certainly echo those remarks. We don't underestimate the significant volume of work that's gone into these proposals. So, Peter and Jonathan, we really do thank you for that. Was there anything that either of you wanted to add to Phil's presentation, please?
Thank you, Leader. Nothing significantly. I think it's just to highlight what's been, as always, a very challenging budget process, arguably made quite a bit easier by the Welsh Government settlement. But notwithstanding that, the last couple of years have been very challenging for the organisation in terms of how the pandemic and the resultant pressures have bared down on organisational capacity. So I think we've just about secured safe passage, I think, in terms of getting these proposals together, a robust set of proposals. And I guess from my perspective as Section 151 officer, I think we've got a very good grasp of the underlying budgetary risks that we're going to be carrying into next year, and Councillor Murphy's obviously talked to those. I think if we combine the month 9 report and the final budget proposals here, there is a joined up strategy underpinning it. And as Councillor Murphy has referred to, our ability to be able to take the opportunity of what is now looking to be an underspend in the current year and allowing us to bolster our reserve cover position to make sure that some of those most significant budgetary risks for next year are covered off as much as we're able to. So I guess we stand here ahead of council tomorrow. And I think, and I've offered this comment in sort of other conversations in recent weeks. I think going into the pandemic in March 2020, if as Section 151 officer, somebody asked me as to whether we would be in the position that we're in now, which is a good one, all things considered, I would never have thought that to be the case. So I think we've navigated the last 2 years very well. And I guess getting to the end of this administration and moving to the next, we at least, leave ourselves in the best position possible, I guess, with the council's finances and the reserve position that we're looking to put in place. So I think that's all I've got to say, Leader. Thank you.
Okay, fab. Thank you very much. So I can't see any hands up, so we'll move then to the recommendations. They're set out in 2.1 through to 2.9 of the report, and we'll we'll vote on those en bloc again, as Councillor Murphy went through them quite thoroughly, so I won't read them all out again, but can we vote on those en bloc, please? The voting icon will come up in the next few moments. There we go. Thank you. So that's unanimous in favour of all those recommendations. Thank you very much. So we'll move then to the next report, which is the Housing Investment Fund and the funding agreement for £5.21 million from the Cardiff Capital Region. Now, I'm going to talk us through this report. The purpose of this report is to seek the endorsement of Cabinet for Monmouthshire County Council to enter into a funding agreement jointly with the Vistry Group for that £5.21 million from the Housing Investment Fund from the Cardiff Capital Region. One of this administration's key priorities has been to deliver a wide range of homes to meet the needs of both existing and future residents. The delivery of key strategic housing sites is critical to this, including in delivering affordable housing. Now, in 2020, the Cardiff Capital Region announced the creation of a £45 million housing investment fund intended to unlock stalled sites that were simply unviable for housing delivery. The point of the fund was to kickstart construction, generate jobs and deliver sustainable developments. A short list of local development plan allocated sites was drawn up here in Monmouthshire. The development that's been proposed, that's been approved for the funding, is the land at Vinegar Hill in Undy. It's the only remaining site left in the LDP that was awaiting allocation that didn't have planning consent. This site had considerable viability issues due to concerns relating to drainage infrastructure. So without this funding, this site simply wouldn't have been viable, and it certainly wouldn't have been in a position to deliver the proposed 25% affordable housing that's associated with it. Our planning committee approved the application on the 12th of January. The terms and conditions of the funding arrangements and the timescales are set out in section 4 of the report. So that's the report in a nutshell. I don't know whether the author of the report, our head of planning, Craig O'Connor, would like to add anything to that, Craig? No? Okay, thank you very much. Phil, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Leader. And like I mentioned for the Abergavenny Fellow Park, I was a member of I still am a member of the planning committee, but I was part of the planning process in approving the development. So it's not declaring an interest, it's just making you aware that I was part of that decision.
Okay, thank you very much. So I can't see any other hands raised, so we'll move then to the...
Sorry, Leader, my hand's
Lisa.
up.
Oh, sorry, Lisa, I didn't see your hand. Come on in.
Thank you. It's just to say that I will be abstaining from voting on this because obviously I strongly objected to this application when it comes to planning. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So we'll move to the recommendation then, which is that we endorse the key terms of the funding agreement and guarantee as set out in the report, and that we provide delegation to the Chief Officer for Enterprise, the Deputy Chief Executive and Chief Officer for Resources in consultation with relevant Cabinet members to enter into the agreements with the Vistry Group when the final documents have been completed. So that's the sole recommendation, and we'll vote on that in a moment when the... There we go. So the box should now be in your chat bar, and can I ask everyone to vote on that, please? So we have 6 votes in favour and 1 abstention. So that recommendation is approved. Thank you very much. We'll move to the 5th report today, which is the update on UK Government Levelling Up White Paper and Shared Prosperity Fund pre-launch guidance. And presenting this report today for us is Councillor Sarah Jones.
Thanks, Leader. Yeah, I'm pleased to present this report to you today. It's an opportunity to provide an update for you on the Levelling Up agenda and the Shared Prosperity Fund. There are a number of recommendations in this paper, 5 to be exact, and I won't read them out in detail, but I will just talk to each of them for you. So firstly, in terms of the Levelling Up funds, whilst we were disappointed not to be successful in round 1, round 2 is now ready to be open for applications. And we strongly believe that following the feedback we've received, we've been in engagement and spoken to officials, that we can now develop the bids that we put in further for both Caldicot and Monmouth and refine those and resubmit them. And we're very much committed to the objectives within those 2 bids. And I do believe, having had the feedback that we've had, we can resubmit those. And hopefully we might see some success on those. So that's to give you an update on where we're at with the Levelling Up funds. Moving to the 2nd and 3rd recommendations of this update report. Under the Levelling Up Fund guidance, we can submit a further bid now related to transport. Now, a number of studies have already been advanced within Chepstow, and funding has been sought under the Chepstow Transport Study. We're still waiting on a decision regarding a revised bid for the transport funding from Welsh Government to support the next stage of the Chepstow Road Solution project. But what we're planning to do and what we're updating on as part of this paper is to put in a further bid into the Levelling Up Fund for proposals around active travel and a transport hub in Chepstow. So the 4th recommendation, and this now brings us on to the Shared Prosperity Fund. We've now received guidance from UK Government to help us in making those preparations for when the fund is officially launched. We don't know yet as a local authority what our allocation is going to be under the Shared Prosperity Fund. But what we do need to do is start to look at the sort of projects we're going to want to submit in for funding. And so what we're going to do is develop an investment plan, and we're going to look to submit that this summer. Now, to help inform the development of that investment plan, we're going to establish a local partnership. That local partnership will be made up of our stakeholders and local partners who can help inform us, provide that advice and guidance on the local need. And there'll also be a role in terms of providing the governance of the fund once the allocations have been received. And then finally, Leader, in terms of the final recommendation on this update report, it's around the Community Ownership Fund, and a really key funding stream for us and for our communities. We've already seen 1 round of that fund be open. The 2nd round is open now, and there'll be a further funding round for the Community Ownership Fund in May. What we're going to be doing as a council will be promoting that fund to our local communities so that they can continue to deliver the real benefit that fund can bring in terms of the sort of community development aspirations that we all have, and I know sits very neatly within Councillor Dimmock's portfolio. So that's the update for you, a bit of a quick run through those, but I think there's some really good progress happening. We're confident that we're going to be putting forward some really strong bids in the future, and we're confident that this will deliver real benefit for our residents right across the county.
Brill, thank you very much. Thank you for that report. I don't know whether the author of the report, Francis O'Brien, has anything you want to add to that, please, before I invite other Cabinet members to come in?
No, thank you. Nothing else to add. Councillor Jones captured the key aspects of the report very well. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, really pleased to see this report. We're really ambitious for the Levelling Up Fund and the opportunities there. Also really pleased to see that recommendation about Chepstow, because we really need to identify that transport solution to the congestion and air pollution problems we've got in Chepstow. So I'm really pleased to see progress on that alongside the work we've been doing with our partners in Gloucestershire. Can I invite Paul Pavier to come in, please? Paul.
Yes, thanks, Lee. And can I thank the cabinet member for the update? Just to obviously echo what's just been said around the Chepstow transport, the options there, both around the traffic mitigation, but also in terms of improving active travel and improving connectivity with public transport as well. Three obviously key elements coming together, which will hopefully underpin the regeneration work that is already happening. There's obviously a lot of work, collaborative work, co-production work going on with Chepstow Town Council at the moment and with the community through the commission provider, Chris Jones, and his associates, looking at the long-term future of Chepstow and not just beyond, not just the town centre itself, but beyond the town centre, ensuring there's real linkage between Bulwark, Thornwell, and the centre of the town, and finding a real positive solution to the long blighted transport and traffic issues that have I think hindered Chepstow and its development. I think is really welcome. So can I thank the cabinet member for that?
Excellent. Thank you very much. That's a point really well made. I can't see any other hands then, so we'll move to the vote on the recommendations then. There are 5 recommendations, and again, Councillor Jones went through those recommendations quite thoroughly, so I won't read those out one by one, but they are set out in 2.1 through to 2.5 of the report. So we'll move to the vote then. Can I ask colleagues to vote on those 5 recommendations now, please? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. So we'll move to the next report then, item 6, which is the proposed changes to the additional learning needs formula. And presenting this report for us is Councillor Paul Parrier.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I'm seeking Cabinet approval to amend the funding formula for delegated funds to schools to support pupils with additional learning needs. Just in the way of context, the formula was last reviewed in 2009 and the current funding model agreed and put in place. So under the current model, funding is delegated as a lump sum to all schools using an indicator of free school meals with additional funding delegated for individual pupils via a panel, and that's depending on their needs, which obviously allows us to agree a funding level. But as Cabinet members will be aware, under the new Additional Learning Needs and Educational Tribunal Act, schools will have increased responsibility to identify and meet those needs of learners who have additional learning needs. So the code states that maintained schools have a key role to play in identifying additional learning needs and in delivering additional learning provision to support learners with additional learning needs. So they are directly responsible for identifying and meeting those needs of the majority of those pupils who have additional learning needs, and they will do that co-productively with parents and carers. So I think, given the new legislation that come into play at the start of this year, formally moving away from a central determination to a local determination model is absolutely right. So the formula is no longer fit for purpose in that respect. It is bureaucratic. And the banding funding is not flexible to be able to be used for groups of pupils with similar needs, and that's in terms of teaching practice, we're moving away from that one-to-one model that we've seen previously, moving to more of a 1-to-3 model, which is obviously beneficial for those learners. So in terms of process, the School Budget Forum was tasked a working group consisting of head teachers and additional learning needs coordinators to look at this during the summer term last year. They agreed a core set of principles which underpinned the consultation process on the formula change. So that those principles were that the funding should follow the pupil, that the funding should allow for current and future needs, The formula should create sustainability in funding so schools can plan. The funding should be able to be used flexibly to meet needs. That a contingency budget will be also held centrally to support pupils that move into Monmouthshire that require additional learning resource. And that will be, and there will be a clear criteria for schools to access that central funding. And no schools will be identified as the principles of what really matters here. So it was for the principles to be agreed on and not, you know, what would the effect be on an individual school. So the working group made a recommendation to the budget forum to go to consultation on the two proposals that you have in front of you. And just for clarity, the consultation only covers funding for pupils with additional learning needs that attend a mainstream Monmouthshire school and does not include the delegated funding to the special resource bases, small class provision at King Henry VIII, or placements in out of county or independent schools. So in terms of the conclusion of the consultation, the majority opted for proposal 1, which is the 70% of the funding distributed on pupil numbers and 30% on current funding for band D and E within the school, as this was perceived to give schools the greatest flexibility to use the funding to support a range of pupils. So the school budget forum have agreed to take the proposal forward to Cabinet for consideration, and all schools have been consulted on the proposals. So in terms of the new formula, it will allow new schools to use the funding more flexibly and to support pupils at an earlier age. There will be transition funding put in place for up to 3 years to smooth the increases and decreases the schools face. However, there will also be a review next April to see or to ensure there are no unintended consequences on our schools from the change. And obviously, if agreed by Cabinet, this formula will be put in place from the 1st of April 2022. So I don't know whether Nikki Wellington, who's the author of the report, whether she wants to come in and add anything to that. Nikki?
Brill. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Pavia. No, you've covered all the points very well. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you both very much. Thanks, Paul. It's very clear that this has undergone quite a thorough consultation and consideration process. So it comes across in the report that that's clearly very robust. So thank you very much for that. I can't see any hands raised. So we'll move straight to the recommendations then, which are that we approve an amendment to the additional learning needs formula to delegate funding to schools, and that the changes to the funding are implemented for the 22-23 budget from the 1st of April this year. So in a moment, the voting box will appear on your screens. There it is. So can I ask Cabinet colleagues to vote on those two recommendations now, please? Okay, that's unanimous in favour of those two recommendations. Thank you very much. And we'll move to the next report, which is the Childcare Sufficiency Assessment 2022 to 27. Councillor Paul Pavia.
Yes, thanks, Leader. Bring this paper to Cabinet colleagues to inform members of the current situation regarding childcare in Monmouthshire. We have a statutory duty to complete a detailed childcare sufficiency survey every 5 years. So, as the Leader just said, this assessment will now be in place and run from 22 through to 27. The process helps us to identify potential gaps in childcare provision or barriers preventing families from accessing childcare, and to develop a set of action plans to help address these issues. So Cabinet colleagues will see in point 8 how the consultation process was executed. And as you'll see from the box there, the table in front of you, there are currently 110 childcare providers across Monmouthshire that are registered with Care Inspectorate Wales. There are also 2 after-school clubs that are not registered as they run for under 2 hours a day. And obviously there's unregistered play provision through Monmouthshire Games and SHEP that is often used by parents as a cost-efficient childcare provision during the school holidays. So these settings are spread fairly evenly throughout Monmouthshire. And considering the population and obviously in demographics of each area, so we've got a reasonable spread. In terms of benchmarking quality, you'll see there in the paper all our settings are at least good across Monmouthshire, with many being deemed excellent by the regulator, which is really positive. In terms of considering the take-up of places and the number of vacancies, waiting lists and the feedback from parents that have come in through the consultation process, it appears that there are generally sufficient childcare places available to meet current demand in all areas of Monmouthshire. However, there are some gaps that need to be addressed, and I'll just sort of highlight some of those gaps. Although there are currently sufficient childcare places for children under 5 years of age, the rollout of free childcare for 2-year-olds, which is obviously a national policy, is likely to increase demand, and this may create a pressure for places in some areas, so we need to be mindful of that. There is demand for additional after-school places in Abergavenny that runs until at least 5:30 to meet the needs of working parents and carers. I think that obviously in our proposals for the new school, we're looking to factor some of that into that design and planning process. There's a limited supply of holiday clubs, and they are not available in all areas of Monmouthshire. However, many childminders have full daycare settings that also providing holiday care as well. Open access play provision is only available during term time and only in the 4 main towns. So obviously that's something that needs to be addressed. Childcare during atypical hours, such as overnight and at the weekend, is a potential gap that has been highlighted through the assessment process. There is insufficiency in terms of Welsh medium childcare provision in Monmouthshire, and this is a significant gap. And this assessment has sort of been triangulated with the work that we did with our Welsh in Education strategic plan that was submitted to the Welsh Government at the end of January. You know, it was something that was highlighted there and will be addressed. At present, there is only one bilingual childminder in Abergavenny, one full day care provider offering childcare for children aged 2 to 5 years in Abergavenny, and sessional care for 2 to 5-year-olds in Caldecott and Monmouthshire. And there is no Welsh medium provision in Chepstow or Usk and Raglan, and none of the existing providers operate during school holidays apart from one childminder. So none of the out-of-school care or play provision is available through the medium of Welsh. In terms of barriers to access, affordability has been highlighted by parents and stakeholders as the main barrier that prevents families from accessing childcare in Monmouthshire. But also cognizant of the foundation phase nursery provision and Fly and Start childcare and the childcare offer, that all schemes that help parents with the cost of childcare, all full day care and sessional care providers are 86% of childminders which are approved to offer funded childcare placements through one or more of these schemes. And the take-up of places is very good. So, you know, the provision is there, the take-up is good, but obviously we need to still look at this affordability gap and see in terms of action planning what can be done. You can see I put in point 4 the list of strategic actions that need to be taken forward. And as I said earlier, if agreed, operational action plans will be designed and implemented to take these actions forward. So that's it in terms of the presentation of the paper, Leader.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Paul. It's a really comprehensive overview of the report and some of the challenges we've got in childcare across the county. Can I ask if Sue Hall, the author of the report, wants to add anything, please?
Thank you, Leader. No, I think Councillor Pavia has given a very comprehensive report, so unless there's any questions.
Okay, fab, thank you very much. I can't see any hands raised. So in that case, thank you very much. We'll move to the recommendations then, which are to approve the childcare sufficiency assessment for the next 5 years for submission to the Welsh Government, and to utilise existing resources and grant funding to address those gaps that Councillor Pavia referred to that have been highlighted in the childcare sufficiency assessment, and develop additional childcare where necessary in line with that action plan. Can I ask colleagues to vote on those two recommendations, please? So we have a unanimous vote in favour of those recommendations. Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul. So we'll move then to the next series of reports. Item 8 is the Chepstow School and Leisure Centre outdoor playing facilities and pitches. And presenting this report for us is Councillor Lisa Dimmock. Lisa.
Thank you, Leader. So this report is looking for Cabinet to approve and progress with funding applications to upgrade the outdoor play facilities and pitches at Chepstow School and Leisure Centre. We'd be working with partners Alliance Leisure and the UK Leisure Framework. This would see a total investment once completed of 1.5 million. Phase 1 was the swimming pool refurb and carbon reduction improvements, which have been completed. Second phase has been approved improvements to the fitness suite, and third phase improvements to the outdoor play facilities and pitches. The current condition of the well-used Astro pitch and Muga are in very poor condition as they are coming to the end of their life. The carpets need replacing and have been identified as a capital pressure of 250,000 per site in 22-23 budget. Monlife applied through various funding streams to develop the outdoor pitches and an outline of the extensive list of proposed improvements are outlined in Appendix B, but include Muga area 68 by 34.5 metres, upgrade lights to LED energy efficiency, repurpose for existing porous macadam court with a 3G carpet, 60 mil long pile, an ATP area of 99 by 62 metres, an outdoor cricket nets with 4 bays, a schoolyard area 30 by 30 metres, storage container, ride-on tractor and PQS. The proposed has been developed with key stakeholders as listed in the report. This improved asset for Chepstow community benefits many sports users and clubs and allow clubs to grow, and would future-proof the site and also benefit the wider area of Caldicot, with the demand for their 3D pitch and Astro pitch exceed capacity at the moment. This supports our commitment to improving the health and well-being of our residents, which is more important than ever. The resource implications: pending successful grants being awarded, that Cabinet approve a capital budget of 101,000 to be created for 21-22 from the Council Capital Match Funding budget to match fund the upgrade and improve the outdoor playing facilities and pitches. Ongoing revenue costs will be met within existing budgets. The delegated budgets are held by the schools. An additional cost will be offset by improved maintenance, and routine maintenance and upkeeping will be undertaken jointly by the school, site maintenance and staff and leisure team. There is potential for an increase in energy costs through increased usage, particularly in the winter months. However, the recent upgrade of the LED lighting will mitigate some of these energy costs. So I'd like to hand back over to the leader to go through the recommendations, and hopefully we can get approval today.
Thank you very much. Really, really positive report. You know, we've always been clear throughout the 5 years of this administration that our #1 priority is offering children and young people the very best possible start in life. Well, this is evident, putting money into these much needed facilities. Can I ask Ian Saunders, the author of the report, if there's anything you want to add to what Lisa said, please?
Thank you, Leader. And Nick John also authored, and he's done a lot of the work and negotiating with our partners for securing the funding. So thanks to Nick on that one. We're really appreciative of the continued support for these services, and obviously the actions and the investment in the sites is most welcome. So really appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you to you and Nick for your work on this. And one thing the pandemic has shown all of us that investment in the well-being of our residents is absolutely critical. Can I invite Paul Pavia to come in, please?
Yeah, thanks, Leader, and just obviously thank the Cabinet member for the paper. As a local Chepstow member, I'm really pleased and welcome both the policy and financial intent of this paper and the recommendations. As the Cabinet member said, there's been significant money invested over the past 8 to 10 months in terms of upgrading the leisure service, the pool, and other aspects of the asset there, which I know is well used. And obviously, it's co-terminus for the school, and just aligns and really underpins the investment that we've put in there over this last administrative term. Well over £1 million additional investment to upgrade various aspects of the building, as well as improve IT infrastructure as well. So it aligns really well with that additional funding, and I'm sure it'll be really welcomed by the school and the pupils who will be able to use those facilities in due course. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Was there anything you wanted to add, Lisa? Should we move to the recommendations?
No, just to thank officers for their time and their hard work on the report, really.
Brill, thank you. So let's move to the 3 recommendations then, which are that we approve a capital budget of just under £102,000 to be created this financial year to match fund the upgrade and improvements of the outdoor playing facilities and pitches at Chepstow Comprehensive School and Leisure Centre. Secondly, that we agree that officers progress and deliver the project. And thirdly, that we note the ongoing investments at Chepstow Leisure Centre, which once completed will represent a total investment of more than £1.6 million. So very welcome investment. So can I ask colleagues to vote on those 3 recommendations, please? And that's unanimous. Thank you all very much. We'll move to the next report then, which is the Active Travel Progress and Funding Overview. Councillor Lisa Dimmock.
Thank you. So this report is seeking endorsement from Cabinet on active travel progress. We are required by the Active Travel Act 2013 to continuously improve facilities and routes for pedestrians and cyclists and create a model shift away from car use for shorter journeys. We have a legal responsibility to create active travel maps which identify existing and potential future routes from any new road schemes or development is required to consider the needs of pedestrians and cyclists at design stage. Welsh Government invites local authorities to bid for funding to deliver the active travel capital infrastructure projects as part of providing core funding to support actions in line with the Act. The last 3 financial years have been achieved funding as outlined in 3.1. This year, officers have submitted a funding application totaling a request of just over 7.9 million grants funding to continue the existing package schemes in Abergavenny, Caldicot and Monmouth. An allocation of 500,000 is expected for the core funding to support county-wide initiatives. Outcome of the bid is expected in March 22. That's this month. You can tell I wrote this earlier. Total requested funding of just over 8.4 million is expected, and the allocated amount in March will be less than requested. With the additional funding secured in year 1, project milestones are hit. A strategic focus has been set out for active travel to provide clarity on our key priorities for route development, and this is agreed by members as part of our active travel network map consultation and is focused on following to develop routes of up to 3 miles where the key destinations focus on travel to school, town centres, key employment sites, bus and train stations. Active travel is aligned with a number of our key policies like future generations and wellbeing objectives, Gwent Public Service Board and decarbonisation plans. Last December, officers submitted active travel network maps to Welsh Government after an 18-month consultation period, which saw thorough engagement through individual responses, social media impressions, and 100% of school participation, and some strong support for the proposals. Since the start of the process in 2016, we have seen an increase of 73 routes added, and we have now 100 routes planned submitted to Welsh Government, and have identified our short, medium and long-term prioritisation of routes to develop over the next 15-year period. Officers are awaiting feedback and approval of the proposed network. Examples of data collection and continued progress can be seen in Appendix B, C and D. Our strategic bids are focused on Abergavenny, Caldicot and Monmouth due to limitations in the national bidding criteria, but active travel progress has been made in a number of county-wide initiatives as set out in 3.10. 3.11, 3.12 and 3.13 set out what officers will continue to do to keep moving forward, and I'm very grateful for all of Paul's hard work. And we have consulted widely, and we will continue to explore routes to enable people to walk and cycle within their communities where they live and work. I don't know if Paul wants to come in. I know he's incredibly passionate about this topic, or I'll hand back to the leader to read out the recommendation.
Thank you. Paul, do you want to add anything?
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Dimmock, for the summary of the report. I think I just wanted to add significant progress has been made over the last 2-year period. I think that's noted in 3.2 from the finance, and we've seen the increase on an annual basis. But not only the finance increase, I think the structure, the holistic and the whole authority approach that has been brought to active travel over the last 2 years. I think our ATNM consultation demonstrated that, with 100% of schools engaging in the process, giving young people the voice and the opportunity to impact on the environment that they're growing up in. So I think collectively we're in a good position, and structurally we're in a good position. There is a significant amount of hard work from officers right across service areas looking to positively impact on this. The routes that we've referenced, 73 routes additionally, have improved and are now compliant since our last submission. Our submission now has gone in and we're waiting for approval from Welsh Government, sets out the next 5, 10, 15-year plan of the 399 additional routes that we want to improve to create that integrated network to make modal shift a real opportunity. And I think the level of bids that we've put in for next year continue to demonstrate our collective ambition in this important area of work. So thank you for your time and your consideration of the report.
Paul, thank you very much, and you and your team deserve massive credit for the way in which you've overseen such, I suppose, a maturing of our approach to active travel, and just the fact that we're bidding for £8 million this year. You only need to go back 4 or 5 years and we were getting peanuts from Welsh Government for active travel. But I think that the way in which we are being really ambitious now, and you mentioned nearly 400 new or upgraded routes, that's really ambitious for our county, and ensuring that people can walk and cycle from one place to another without going on a 60-mile-an-hour road. So I think the progress that's been made in the last couple of years is incredible, and you and your team deserve massive credit, and I'm grateful to Lisa for leading on this. I think we reflect on these last 5 years, and certainly active travel is one of those areas that's got to be one of the great achievements of the administration. I can't see any hands raised, so we'll move then to the recommendation then, which is that we endorse the progress on active travel as set out in the report. Can I ask everyone to vote on that recommendation, please? Thank you all very much. Well, it's unanimously in favour. It doesn't look like every vote has been recorded, but it's certainly a vote in favour of that recommendation. Yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. So Lisa, on to your third report, the Castle Dell play area.
Yes, so this is another one for Chepstow. So this report is seeking approval from Cabinet to support an application to the People and Places programme of the Big Lottery to upgrade the children's play area at the Dell Play Park. Many of you know Castle Dell Play Park, and it has been in place for many years and is located close to the town centre and Bank Street car park and the Dell Primary School, but it is in dire need of an upgrade. Local community group of interested parents, Friends of Dell Park Chepstow, have been working with landscape architects to redesign the area. And you can see the image in Appendix A, which is what they've created, and it's very fitting for the area. It will need to go through planning and scheduled ancient monument consent due to how close it is to the historic wall. They are proposing to move the play park a short distance further away from the wall, and CADU have been involved with the process along with the Town Council. Another lovely idea is to include some interpretation of local history of the wall and its significance, which I really love that idea. The bid for 100,000 will be submitted to the lottery for funding for the first stage. The Castle Dell is in private ownership with the local authority leasing it, which dates back to 1946. It was last renewed in 2017 for 25 years, and the owners have given permission subject to the final design. And we will continue to consult with them throughout the whole process. We undertook an assessment of our 110 play parks in 2019, and this park in particular was rated very poorly. So I think now is the right time for this improvement to provide a suitable play park for all in Chepstow and its visitors to the area. I'd like to give credit and appreciation to Friends of Castle Dell Park, who have carried out local consultation, and their proposal is very much in line with the Council's revised vision for our fixed play provision. So I'll hand back to you now, Leader, to read out the recommendations. I don't know if I do believe Mike Moran, the author of the report, is on, but he's carried out a lot of work into this, and I'd just like to thank him.
Well, thank you. Mike, is there anything you'd like to add to that, please?
No, I don't think so, Leader. I think it is fairly self-explanatory, and I think Councillor Dimmock has presented it fairly thoroughly there, really. So,
fab.
Just if you approve it today, we'll get on to working on it tomorrow.
Excellent. Good. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Right, Paul Pavia, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. It's a really good afternoon for Chepstow, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, as local member, again, really welcome the policy intent and the financial intent within this paper. As a parent in Chepstow, I have and continue to use this park with my children, and as the Cabinet member said, it is in desperate need of investment. The Friends of Dell Park was set up a few years ago. They're a group of interested parents with a view to upgrading the play area, and I've been working really hard for the last 3 or 4 years. Not just with the landowner to try and get that resolved. I know that was problematic at a few stages, but obviously working with other key stakeholders and with the landscape architect to complete the redesign of the site. As the Cabinet member said, the phase 1 plans are really exciting, and I certainly welcome the investment made by Chepstow Town Council to allow this work to go ahead. That was a really important impetus there to trigger that. Again, as the Cabinet member alluded to, and from my perspective as a historian by trade, what really enthuses me is the design incorporates the features that will enhance the historic interpretation of the town wall. It's embedding the historic and cultural significance of the town in our local children very early on in their lives, and hopefully will inspire them to study history. So as I said, the policy intent, the match funding, establishing the memorandum of understanding really solidifies the partnership with the Friends Group. And there are so many excellent community groups like the Friends right across this county that just need enabling. And this is really the right thing for this council to do. So can I just thank the Cabinet member again?
Brill, thank you very much. We'll move to the recommendations then. I have to say, I really welcome the report and echo those points that both Lisa and Paul have made, and thanks the Friends of Dell Park. So the two recommendations are then that we agree to submit an application to the National Lottery Community Fund for a grant to upgrade the children's play area at Castle Dell in Chepstow, working in collaboration with the Friends of Dell Park, and that a reserve commitment of £25,000 is made from the Council's 2021-22 match fund budget. Can I ask everyone to vote on those two recommendations, please? That's unanimous in favour of those recommendations. Thank you very much. And Lisa, your fourth report, you're spending some money this afternoon, is the Abergavenny Velo Park.
Yes, thank you, Leader. This is to receive an update on the Abergavenny Velo Park project and to commit Section 106 capital resources to the project in 22-23. So we awarded a grant from Welsh Government to develop the Velo Park, and the site plan can be found in Appendix A. It's been developed with a number of key stakeholders we have consulted with Sport Wales, British Cycling and 2 local cycling clubs, of which we've received a petition this week in support of the Velo Park. Provision of the Velo Park forms the element of Council's evolving cycling strategy and will hopefully form part of a network of regional facilities promoted by Welsh Cycling. The planning application was approved at Planning Committee yesterday, where some concerns were raised and put in the report and were discussed in full. This is a difficult site due to its topography, biodiversity and ecology, and a number of protected species identified in and around the surrounding areas. There is a separate proposal by the owner of Grove Farm and Gwent Wildlife Trust to develop a wetland reserve between the River Usk and the proposed Velo Park. This could potentially provide us an opportunity for future partnership on managing the new habitats. Officers are working with Welsh Cycling senior managers and local clubs to develop proposals for the ongoing management of the Velo Park, and are looking to mirror similar projects elsewhere in the UK. We are not looking to appoint a permanent manager or increase resource to manage the site. This Velo Park will host a range of cycling events organised by the council, local cycling groups and Welsh Cycling, along with use by schools and cycling clubs to hire, which will allow to produce an income. The use of the site will not be restricted to just cycling, but will also provide a provision for wheeled sports such as wheelchair, rollerblades, but also walking and running. We anticipate 6 regional events will take place each year, and additional parking will be provided on nearby land ownership. If I could just briefly go through the resource implications. So it's estimated that development of the Velo Park will cost between 1.4 and 1.6 million, and the scheme is capable of being developed in 3 different phases of work. The first phase of work will include an overall site setup, access car parking and construction of the first section of the circuit. The overall circuit will consist of 3 separate but interlinked sections of track. The first will provide a safe alternative facility to that is currently used by local cycling clubs at the Abergavenny School and Leisure Centre, which will obviously be displaced when work commences on King Henry School. Capital funding recommended in paragraph 2.1 is available from section 106, payments received from the developers of the residential development at Westgate and Gavenny Gate. The capital funding referred to paragraph 2.1b will be received by the council from the residential development at Grove Farm, Lamfoist, before the first occupation of the 20th dwelling on site, and funding of 492,000 set out in the recommendations will be sufficient to cover the cost of the first phase of works, and potential additional sources of funding for the second and third phases of the project include British and Welsh Cycling and the Welsh Government and Sport Wales. So thank you. I want to hand back to you, Leader, to read out the recommendations. I do apologise. I'm struggling to get my words out. I haven't had a drink, I promise.
Fab, thank you very much.
Just yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Moran, author of the report. Is there anything you'd like to add, please?
Not really, Chair. I think that Councillor Dimmock has outlined pretty much all that we want to say. Really, this is the culmination of about 4 years' work in the background with local clubs and with Welsh Cycling. So it's quite an important milestone in the development of the project, really. And hopefully, if members approve it today, we can actually start to work up the plans in a little bit more detail. And there's quite a bit more work to be done to satisfy some of the planning conditions, because as you've quite rightly said, it is quite a sensitive site. But we have worked with ecologists and our biodiversity team, so we're pretty confident that we can actually make a success of this one.
Brill, thank you very much. Phil Murphy, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Leader, and I'm pleased that this goes very nicely with the previous report on active travel. That link through from Abergavenny will encourage people to actually cycle to the Velo Park rather than use vehicles, because I know that from the planning meeting yesterday and my site visit there on Monday, that residents have concerns over the amount of traffic that can be on occasions generated by this particular development. There will be robust traffic management and general management measures in place, which I'm personally satisfied with. But as I say, it is very good that this links in with the active travel report. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Yeah, it ties in really nicely, doesn't it? And I have to say, I'm really excited about this report and the benefits that this park could bring in terms of cycling and sporting tourism to Monmouthshire, and it would be a fantastic asset in, I suppose, just cementing our reputation as a destination for cycling. So I've been contacted by a number of residents, some in the Llanfoist area in the last few days. Again, really excited about this development and really hoping that it's something we're able to support. So I'll move us to the recommendations then, there are three: that a capital budget of £492,000 be created this financial year to fund the construction of the first phase of the Abergavenny Velo Park, that we continue to work with other partner agencies to support a community group to form and subsequently source and apply for further funding towards the second and third phases, and thirdly, that we commit to any expenditure from the above sums is subject to the submission and approval of a satisfactory management agreement with a supporting business plan for the proposed new Velo Park. So those are the three recommendations. Can I ask colleagues to vote on those now, please? So there we have a unanimous vote in favour of those recommendations. Thank you very much. So we'll move to the next report then, which is the 2022-23 Education and Welsh Church Fund Investment Fund and Strategies. Phil.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And this is an annual report, the purpose of which is to present to Cabinet for approval the 22-23 investment and fund strategy for the trust funds, for which the authority acts as sole custodian trustee for adoption, and to approve the 2022-23 grant allocation to local authority beneficiaries of the Welsh Church Fund. In the recommendations, it's the proposed investment and fund strategy for 22-23 for the Monmouthshire Farm School Endowment Trust Fund as set by the Trust be endorsed. That a similar endorsement for the Welsh Church Act Fund, to delegate responsibility for the execution and administration of Treasury management decisions to the Deputy Chief Executive Officer and Chief Officer of Resources, Section 151 Officer, who will act in accordance with the investment fund strategy, to approve the grant allocation to local authority beneficiaries to the Monmouthshire Welsh Church Act Fund of £190,000 to be distributed in accordance with population data in the draft local government settlement for 22-23, and to note the Monmouthshire Farm School Trust Board determined the 22-23 grant allocation for the year in July 2021. However, this is reviewed at every meeting to ensure that the grants offered do not exceed previous year's investment return at the end of March 21, and any other spends carried forward from the 21-22 grant allocation, thus avoiding eroding the overall fund. And I confirm that we do that because I'm on that committee. To endorse the Welsh Church and Church Fund principles, policy considerations and grant allocation criteria as considered and approved by the Welsh Church Fund Committee in January this year, and to endorse the policy that Monmouthshire County Council, as trustee, ensures that the constituent councils that benefit from grant distributions ensure that grants allocated are in line with the charitable objects of the fund, and this is in fact advertised on their authority's website. As I've mentioned, the authority acts as a sole trustee for the Welsh Church Act Fund, and the contract for the position of Treasury Advisor to the Monmouthshire County Council, the Welsh Church Act Fund and the Monmouthshire Farm School Endowment was awarded to Arling Close Limited, our Treasury Advisors to the Council, for 4 years with the option of extending for a further 2 years. This option was subsequently taken up. All three bodies will therefore continue to receive ongoing advice and support on investments until at least the 31st of March 22 from the Arling Close contract and beyond from the newly appointed Treasury Advisors. So the investment and fund strategy enacting its capacity and as either sole trustee or custodian, the authority is required to have investment policy in place for the Monmouthshire Farms Endowment Trust and the Welsh Church Fund in order to comply with the Trustee Act 2000. The policies ensure that monies are invested in the best interests of the trust. The annual investment and trust and fund strategies for the Monmouthshire Welsh Act Church Fund and the Monmouthshire Farm School Endowment Trust Fund are set in priorities are in order to show that maintain the security of invested capital, to maintain sufficient liquidity to allow grants to be distributed, and maintain an optimum yield which is commensurate with the security and liquidity. So as I said, Leader, this is an annual report, just underlying the fact that this is looked at very, very closely in conjunction with our Treasury Advisors. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you very much. I can't see any hands raised on this. So, Phil, as you've covered the recommendations quite thoroughly there, we'll vote on those en bloc, please. So that's the recommendations set out from 2.1 through to 2.7 in that report. We'll vote on those en bloc. It's in the chat bar now. Can I ask everyone to cast their votes, please? And that's unanimous. Thank you. We'll move then to the final report today, which is the Welsh Church Fund Working Group. Councillor Phil Murphy.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And there's only one application that's been looked at this time. It's St Odysseus Church, Llandogal. They requested £7,500 to assist with the refurbishment of the kitchen area of the church to enable the church to be used for community activities. the committee looked at this and recommended 2,500 be awarded to assist with that project. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's vote then on whether we approve that recommendation of £2,500 for Landogo. Can I ask Cabinet colleagues to cast their votes, please, on that one dispersal? And we voted in favour of that recommendation. Thank you very much. So that brings us to the end of those 13 reports and to the end of the last Cabinet meeting of this 5-year administration. It's been an enormous privilege for the 8 of us in this Cabinet to serve as Cabinet members. It's a responsibility that we don't take lightly. We all came into public service and put our names forward to be councillors because of a passion to do our best for the people we represent, and that goes for councillors of every party represented in this council. We've had extraordinary unforeseen challenges over the last 2 years, and I have to say that our officers and the volunteers across the county have really risen to those challenges in a way that has really inspired us. The next Cabinet meeting will be early on in the new term. So for now, I'd like to thank officers for all their efforts over the last 5 years in delivering on our priorities. We've been really blessed with some fantastic officers in this council, and we're very grateful for their efforts. I'd like to thank group leaders for their robust scrutiny, their cooperation, and there have been many times when we've worked in partnership. So particularly to Simon Harrith and Joanne Watkins, who are on the call today. Thank you to them. I note we haven't had apologies from Councillor Batruni today, but we know that he's standing down, so we wish him well for the future. But above all, I'd like to thank the public, the people of Monmouthshire. It has been a real privilege to serve. And we'd like to thank you for your engagement, your interest, and for the opportunity to work on your behalf over the last 5 years since May 2017. So on that note, thank you all very much. Thank you to my colleagues, and good afternoon.